And lights up. We have it. Well, hello again. Remember me? I was here just a few minutes ago. First of all, ladies and gentlemen, it's great to be back in Finland again. It's been something like 20 years since I was here last. Incredible, but it's still the same country. Strange sun and strange dark periods and whatnot, but that's the way you've always done it, so I suppose you should continue doing that. I apologize, first of all. There is a language barrier here. I am very edified to know that most people all through the rest of the world are now speaking English, which is a great relief to me, and I'm able to perform for audiences everywhere and be understood in my language. So I rather apologize for not being able to address you in your language. But if you have any problems, you'll come after, and you can ask me questions about things I said, and I hope you don't all come, but some of you would be very welcome. Now, one thing that was not mentioned in the introduction was that I have the great privilege of announcing that I have an asteroid named after me. This is an asteroid that was named after me in 1996, and it's called Randi, appropriately. And it's rather a distinct honor. I had the privilege, some years ago when this happened, the privilege of calling my good friend Arthur C. Clarke in Sri Lanka, who has now left us, unfortunately. And I announced to him, Arthur, I've had an asteroid named after me by the International Astronomical Union. And he said to me, he said, yes, it's quite exciting, isn't it? I had one named after me many years ago. So I had the great delight of being able to send him an email shortly after that. And I said, I got a hold of the International Astronomical Union. And I asked them what the size of your asteroid is. And they said, oh, about 100 miles on each side. I want to tell you, Arthur, that my asteroid is 140 on each side. My asteroid is bigger than your asteroid. I don't know whether he took that well or not. Come to think of it, I never heard from him again. No, that's not true. I lied. Now, ladies and gentlemen, many of you will be wondering, who are not familiar already with my work, what is my expertise? I am not a scientist. I try to be a teacher in my own way, in my amateur way. I am a magician by trade. That is to say, more correctly, a conjurer. Someone who approximates the effect that a magician would be able to perform, because a magician, by definition, would be someone who subverts nature, who changes the laws of the universe and makes things work differently from the way they usually do. Now, as a magician, as a conjurer, more correctly, as a magician, I do this for purposes of entertainment only. And one thing I know about my art as a magician, I know that people make assumptions. That is to say, if I give them some sort of suggestion as a magician on stage, I give them a suggestion, and if I do it properly and pleasantly enough, they will tend to follow that suggestion. They will accept what I suggest to them. Now, you'll never, as a magician, walk on stage and say, I have here an ordinary deck of cards. You never say that, because that gives the audience the idea, oh, I never thought of that. Maybe that's not an ordinary deck of cards. So you never give them that suggestion. You just allow them to assume that it's an ordinary deck of cards. Now, we all make assumptions. Oh, I can imagine some people sitting here saying, not me, I don't make assumptions. No, not me. Well, if you didn't make some assumptions, you would be catatonic. You would freeze up. Now, traffic lights, for example. I travel all over the world, as I said, and I can tell you that red means stop, and green means go, and amber means go like hell. That's the rules of the road. The rules of the road are something that you can pretty well depend upon, but we make a lot of other assumptions. For example, now, many people say, oh, I got to look at James Randi, and he looks like a regular fellow, has a beautiful beard, he's a handsome chap, and has a nice tie, and a few things like that. But then if you ask him, does he wear glasses? Oh, yes, he wears glasses. No, I don't. These are not glasses. These are just empty frames. The glasses are actually here in my pocket, someplace embedded in my chest. And I now will put them on, and for the first time I will see you as an artist. They're ugly. I'm so surprised. Now, you made the assumption, because I walked out here with a pair of frames on my face, that there were lenses in the frame. And that's an ordinary assumption. That's a regular, expected assumption. But you would be wrong if you went home and said that he wore glasses until later on in the lecture, at this point, you see. But there are other assumptions that you've made as well. For example, you think that this is a microphone. It is not. It is beard trimmer. You see, you made that automatic assumption too, and I will move the microphone around onto my tie, and you'll hear me much better. Conclusion, see? Yes, this is a little clearer. It is muffled by the tie. But I use these two little tricks to show you that you too can make innocent assumptions, and you will do it if you're given the chance. Now, at the James Randi Educational Foundation, we fight astrology, speaking to the dead, prophecy from stock market all the way to hockey scores, curing illnesses, giving advice on critical matters, tarot cards to crystal balls, the whole thing, love and marriage, anything whatsoever. We give advice on these things, and the advice is very simple. It's all nonsense, fraud, information. It's a fake. Now, one thing that I want to discuss with you in detail, because I think it's very, very important, is the matter of homeopathy. Now, I'd like to see hands. If someone here has a brief definition, just a sentence or so, on what homeopathy really is. Can I see some hands? The person right back. Yes, please.
Well, it's the principle that the more you dilute a medicine into a pill or some liquid, yes, the more effective it is.
All right. The gentleman said that the more that you dilute a medicine down into the form of a pill or a liquid, the more effective it is. Well, that's generally the idea, yes. But I'm going to do an experiment right now. I have, where is the bottle of sleeping pills? Otto, here we have it right here. This is Otto J. Makala, a good friend of mine, and he has given me a bottle that he purchased. Where was this purchased?
It was purchased at the Hakaniemi apothecary, or Circulum apothecary, right on the bit eastwards from here.
I see, and there are how many tablets in here? It says...
It's about 8 grams, I think.
It says 20 grams altogether.
That was the larger one, yes.
Yeah, that was, all right, but it's full of pills,
full.
Very, very, very tiny pills. And this is Arsenicum album. Ooh, that sounds deadly, doesn't it? Well, it's made with arsenic, you see, and that sounds deadly. I have a glass of water here. This bottle is brand new. Here are some of the pills, and the dose is 2 pills as needed. I see. Well, I don't need all of these, but there's at least 20 or 30 of them here. Well, they're very sweet. Here. Let's continue on. Why not? Yes. I'm sure I have an overdose by now, but let's be sure. I'm killing myself, and this man is laughing. Let's do it again. I haven't got time to go through the entire bottle. Oops, I lost a pill. That's 2 of them. One more dose, and I will be thoroughly overdosed on arsenic.
Be careful.
Be careful of filling the rest of the pills. I have so much sugar in me, I'll get diabetes. All right.
You might just get sweet on homeopathy.
Very true. Now, I have just taken what should be quite a fatal dose of arsenic. I do love arsenic. Now let me describe to you just what homeopathy really is. This takes some concentration. Homeopathy was come up with about 400 years ago by a man named Hahnemann, who lived in Switzerland. And his idea was that there are vibrations set up in a glass of water. If you showed these people a big basket full of vibrations, they wouldn't know what they look like. They don't know what the word means at all. Oh, vibrations, that's a good woo-woo word. That's modern age. Oh yes, this is the new thing. The new age technique of vibrations. They don't know what vibrations means at all, these poor people. But the interesting thing to me is that Hahnemann came up with this idea and then did what he called provings. The way you do the proving is well, first of all, you take one part of the original substance and you dilute it in 10 parts of water, but you have to do it by tens. This is very interesting. 10 is the magic number in homeopathy. Now, this is an exact description. You may never have heard this detailed description before, but bear with me. You take one part of the active substance, whatever it is, you put it in 10 parts of water, and then you have to success it. And that means shaking it up 10 times this way, 10 times this way, and 10 times this way. That's in 3 dimensions, as you see. Then you take one part of that water and you put it in 10 parts of water again, and you success it again, 10 times in each direction. This is a slow and very boring process, I can assure you. You keep on doing that until you reach the concentration of the medicine here. And this is put on sugar pills because it doesn't really matter how you administer it as long as you get it into your body, you see. And they start at a dilution of 30. The dilution of 30 means 10 to the power of 30 parts of water and 1 part of the original substance. Now that's well beyond Avogadro's limit, which is 10 to the 23rd. If you know what Avogadro's limit was, he was a very difficult man, apparently. And he said that if you keep diluting something down to 10 to the power of 23 parts of diluent, as opposed to the original substance, that you will only have the chance of there being 1 molecule or atom of the original substance there. So by the time you get to 10 to the 24th, you have 1 chance in 10 of there being 1 molecule. I know this sounds complicated, but it's sillier than it is complicated, I can assure you. So they like to start at a concentration of 30. Wow. Now the interesting thing to me about this is that one of the most popular homeopathic cures, as they call them, is a cure that is based on duck livers. Now this is not popular with ducks, but if you have 1 duck liver, that would be enough duck liver at that dilution to make homeopathic medicines that would fill the entire solar system and then a little bit beyond. That's a lot of medicine. A lot of medicine. A big sphere with the sun at the center and the orbit of Pluto, it used to be a planet, remember? Way at the outside and a little bit more than that. That's how dilute this substance is, and that is what homeopathy is all about. It sounds incredible, and it is incredible. But the rule of homeopathy that will really surprise you, I hope you're ready for this. I'm glad you're all seated because you'll fall down in surprise. The more dilute it is, the stronger it is. That's incredible. The more dilute it is, the stronger it is. So if you take that 1 pill and put it in a glass of water and shake it up, and then take just a drop of that and put it in, you can get it so strong I mean, you'd think, well, a whole crowd of us went out on the plaza this morning, and we all took a fatal dose of sleeping pills and arsenic as well. And I'm a little drowsy, but not all that drowsy, I assure you. I think I'm going to live to a ripe old age. I'm only 81 at the moment. I've got a long time to go, even though I do this at every one of my lectures. Now, the rule about it being stronger the more dilute it is so incredibly ridiculous that it is hard to believe that anyone came up with this. As a matter of fact, in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, where I live, we had a very sad thing happen the other day. A gentleman who depended on homeopathic medicine died of an overdose. He forgot to take his medicine. I'm not taking it at all. He overdosed. Now, the word that appears on all these bottles and all these cartons and whatnot of homeopathic medicine, the big word is natural. Oh, that's a buzzword. That's wonderful. It's natural, so it must be good. Well, bird shit is natural. And gravel on the ground, that's natural, but I don't eat it. I hope I don't eat it, that is. Now, take a look at this. Here's a box of what's called Cold Ease. This is a homeopathic remedy. It says right here, homeopathic, right there, in white letters against black. And it says clinically proven to reduce the duration of the common cold. It's made with zinc gluconate. Zinc gluconate is an active chemical that will relieve the symptoms of the average cold. But wait a minute, is this really homeopathic? Oh, dilution is 2x. What does that mean? It means 1 part in 100. That's 1%, and zinc gluconate is very powerful. Oh, here is Zicam. This is a cold remedy. Get over your cold faster. Reduce the severity of cold symptoms. Melts in your mouth. And homeopathic remedy, it says right on there. This particular product in the United States sells for about 70% more than a legitimate bit of medicine because it's homeopathic. You see, it's avant-garde. It's very exciting. It's the new medicine. But it has zinc gluconate in it in a much higher concentration, 1 part in 20, 5% solution of zinc gluconate. And that does work to reduce the symptoms. Doesn't cure the cold, but it is not homeopathic, and they can charge 70% more for it because they say it's homeopathic. Incredible. But these are frauds, absolute frauds, and the Federal Drug Administration in the United States can't do a thing about it. For a strange reason. Because homeopathy existed before the National Food and Drug Administration in the United States was established. So it's what we call grandfathered. In other words, it came along before the regulations. So they can say anything they want about it, and they can sell it any place without any proof whatsoever. They're protected under the law. A ridiculous law, but there it is. Now, I'm about to show you a bit of video. This is a program that I did some years ago with my good friend, the late Johnny Carson. That Carson show happened late at night, was perhaps the most popular television show in the history of the United States of America. It was watched, he did it for something like 30 years. It was an incredible show, very, very popular. And I did some research on a fellow named Peter Popoff. Peter Popoff was a gentleman who on stage would be running around screaming and waving a Bible constantly, of course, and he would go down into the audience and he would pick somebody out in the audience, and that person in the audience that he picked out, he'd ask them to stand up, and then he'd be able to call out their name and the disease that they thought they had, and then he would tell them how he would direct his prayers in return for a donation, of course, direct the prayers of Almighty God to cure them from that disease, and they would feel so much better. They wouldn't recover from the disease, but they'd feel so much better just by giving out the money. Well, we found out what his gimmick was, and I went to Johnny Carson's producer, and I said, Fred, that was Fred DeCordova, his producer, and I said, Fred, I want to show you this videotape. I showed them the videotape, and Fred said, oh my, he said, this is very strong. John will want to put it on the show, I'm sure, tonight. He said, I'll tell him. I said, no, Fred, don't tell him. He said, oh, I have to tell him because John doesn't like surprises. And then I said to him, think of the expression on his face. Fred thought for a minute. He said, okay, but it's on your head. I'm going to blame you for it if he's angry about it. Well, we did it that night on the show. And you're going to see the unedited video, well, partially unedited videotape. I'll tell you afterwards where it was edited. But this is the videotape as it was shown on the television sets all over the United States of America that very same night. And we'll see that video now.
Now, you've got a small piece of tape here we're going to look at. Would you tell us what we're going to see here and how you did this and what it's supposed to show?
Well, we researched Peter Popoff very, very well. And Mr. Popoff, pardon me, Reverend Popoff, is not going to be very happy with this, I don't think. You're going to see, first of all, a short segment of tape as you would see it if you're watching it at home. This is what Popoff featured on his own program. You will apparently see a healing. Now, we went to Houston, Texas, and we discovered that the man was wearing, of all things, a hearing aid in his left ear, and a man who heals the deaf, Popoff himself.
Oh, I see.
And a man who heals the deaf and the blind isn't going to have much use for a hearing aid. One would think if God is speaking to him, maybe someone else is speaking to him. So when we got to San Francisco, we put this fellow Alec Jason as an expert in electronics and a surveillance man, and he put a scanner, an electronic scanner on it, and we picked up something interesting. But first, let's look at the first cut of tape.
All right, this is the tape as you would see it if you were watching the show. Okay, watch the monitors.
Who is Harold?
Great voice.
I just believe that God is going to burn those cataracts off of your eyes right now. 34788 Foothill Drive. I tell you, the angels of God are round about your home. Oh, just take those glasses off and put your eyes. If you've got cataracts, if you've got glaucoma, I want you just to put your hand over your eyes as I pray for these precious ones. Sister, you've got eye problems, to take your glasses off, lay your hands on your eyes. Here it comes. God is going to give these precious ones divine surgery. Right now, Jesus. That's it. That's the anointing of the Holy Ghost. Praise God. Praise God. I tell you, the anointing is flowing through this place. Thank you, Jesus.
Okay, now let's recap what we've seen here. Right. These two people who were there had not met Popoff before themselves. And yet he calls out his name, and then he called out a number or something?
He called out their address.
Their address.
And they're astonished to hear this, because they didn't tell him. But what you don't know is that his wife has been touring around the audience, getting into conversation. Is Jesus going to heal you today? I see. Where do you live? This kind of thing. And they filled out healing cards in advance of the program and handed them in. They're now backstage, and someone is sitting at a transmitter backstage. Let's see that same segment again. But now you will have the advantage of knowing what Peter Popoff is hearing in his left ear through a hearing aid.
Jerry Reed.
Is it Jerry?
Reed.
Reed? Is it Reed? Jerry Reed?
It's a woman. She's praying for her husband, Harold.
Who is Harold?
He's got cataracts.
I just believe that God is going to burn those cataracts off of your eyes right now.
They live at 34788 Foothill Drive.
34788 Foothill Drive. I tell you, the angels of God are round about your home. Just take those glasses off and put your eyes. If you've got cataracts,
She's got eye problems too.
you've got glaucoma, I want you just to put your hand over your eyes as I pray for these precious ones. Sister, you've got eye problems, to take your glasses off, lay your hands on your eyes. Here it comes. God is going to give these precious ones divine surgery. Right now, Jesus.
Well, that's disturbing when you see it.
It isn't it?
You tend to laugh at it, and yet these people obviously are so impressed with what's going on.
Oh, they're absolutely impressed. You see people collapse on the floor, tears running down their faces, believing that their kids with drug addiction are going to be healed now because he knew their name. He says he's talking to God, that God speaks directly to him because he's an anointed minister, and three things amaze me about that. First of all, it turns out that God's frequency, I didn't know he used radio, is 39.170 megahertz, and God is a woman, obviously, and sounds exactly like Popov's wife, Elizabeth.
Has he seen this tape, John?
No, he does not know about this until this very moment.
Interesting. Okay. We'll take a break.
Now, the result of that videotape was absolute disaster for Peter Popoff. He almost promptly went out of business, and he changed the name of his ministry from Peter Popoff Ministries to People United for Christ. Stayed in the same headquarters, he just changed the sign. And he was back in business. Now, he is still back in business, ladies and gentlemen. I used to get calls from Johnny Carson there, and he'd say, "Randy, I saw Popoff on television again. I thought we put him out of business." I said, "John, this is an unsinkable rubber duck. There's nothing you're going to be able to do about this. People just will not listen, and they will not learn from what we try to teach them." And that's the way it is, unfortunately. It's very sad, but it's very true. Peter Popoff, in 2009, according to his accountant, brought in $1 million more than the year in which we exposed him on the Johnny Carson show. Incredible, but true. There is no way you're going to stop these people, and there are no federal laws in the United States of America to stop them. Now, we have the $1 million prize. Surprisingly enough, Peter Popoff has not come to us for the $1 million. I have no idea why. We've offered it for 11 years now. And our website, Swift, named after Jonathan Swift, the famous English satirist and skeptic, gets 9,000 hits a day on an average internationally. So this is well known. Peter Popoff knows that the offer is out there. All of the rest of the psychics do too. But we don't get the application. You'd think there would be a crowd as big as this waiting outside the entrance right here, waiting to try to collect the $1 million. Where are they? That's my question. Well, I think I know why they're not coming in for the prize. Now take, for example, a woman named Sylvia Brown in the United States of America. She appeared on the Larry King Show, which is internationally seen all over the world. And she said that she would take the $1 million prize when she was questioned by Larry King. She said she would do that. Oh, really? Well, if that's true, I'm waiting for her call. 11 years ago, and she still hasn't found me. Wait a minute, she said she couldn't find me. There are 105 million references to me on Google alone. Most of them have my address and or my phone number. I'm in the phone book. I'm easily findable. Here I am. Hello, Sylvia. Where are you? Now, she talks to dead people. And I'm not dead, as you may have noticed. I'm available, Sylvia. Where are you? Someone who talks to dead people can't find me? Oh, I don't think so. But she's ignored it because she has to ignore it. She knows very well she cannot produce. Now, I don't say that Sylvia Brown doesn't talk to dead people. I can talk to dead people. Hello. That doesn't mean they're going to answer. That's the basic question here. Will they answer? And of course they don't. I don't say these things don't exist. Now bear that in mind. When you leave here today, I want you to remember one thing that I am pushing for you to understand. The James Randi Educational Foundation and James Randi himself does not make any claim that these wonderful powers don't exist. We simply say, you say they exist? All right, prove it and win $1 million. That should be easy. But they're not lined up outside unless this whole crowd was lined up outside just to come in and win the $1 million. Now I'm a little afraid. Now all these religious claims are eligible for the $1 million. All of them, and unreligious claims as well, all kinds of supernatural, occult, and paranormal claims. Now one thing that makes me wonder about the United States of America, you know, you folks have got us all beat. The rest of the world has all beat on one particular aspect. The metric system. In the United States of America, we don't use the metric system. We still measure temperature in Fahrenheit. Oh, that's very scientific. And we talk about miles and rods and various other measurements like this. We have no idea how to use the simplest system in the world, which is the metric system. And I want to tell you why. Now, I say this in the United States, and some people say, oh, come on, that can't be true. They go away and they come back to me and they say, damn, I looked into it, and it's true. Because there are lobbyists in Washington, D.C. These are people who are paid by certain interests out there, whether they be manufacturers or different agencies of various kinds, that want to pay these lobbyists to work for them to convince congressmen of certain points of view. And the religious lobbyists out there, for years now, have been telling the congressmen, oh, don't use the metric system. You know, that was designed by atheists. And the worst kind, French atheists. And we wouldn't want to have that. I mean, after all, that's not the devil. It's the devil's work. It's not the work of the Bible, because they say that the English system of measurement is much closer to the Bible, which it is not. It's nothing like the measurement system used in the Bible. But that's a reason that our congressmen won't activate the metric system in the United States of America, which would simplify all of our lives. You know what happened with the Hubble Space Telescope. Part of it was made on the metric system and part of it was made on the English system, and when they got up in space and put the two of them together, guess what? They didn't work. And it cost us another $20 million and the cost of sending up the shuttle with a whole repair crew to go out there with wrenches and change the mirrors and move lenses around and whatnot. And they finally got it working, and it's done a wonderful job since. I'm sure you'll all agree. It's a wonderful tour de force, a great piece of technology, but we could have been spared all that trouble, and I helped them pay for that with my tax money. Now, back to for a moment to the magician as an entertainer. I have often given this example. I've got pills in my mouth here somewhere. I got those from. Imagine that you're going to see a Shakespeare play named Hamlet. You're all familiar with that, of course. Very famous Shakespeare play. Suppose you see it advertised in the marquee of the theater, and you go into the theater, you buy your ticket first, I would hope. And then you go into the theater, you sit down, you watch the play, and you're very edified by it. You give a big round of applause to the cast, and they come out and take bows. And finally, the star of the show, Hamlet himself, comes walking out, or the actor who plays Hamlet, I should be more correct. And he takes his bow, and he holds up his hand, and he says, ladies and gentlemen, he takes off the wig. He says, I want you to know something. I'm not just an actor. I actually am a Prince of Denmark. You would be insulted. You've paid to go in and see this man do this wonderful play, and he's a good actor, and you enjoyed it, and you gave him the round of applause. Then he comes out and tells you he really is Hamlet. You would be insulted, but you're not insulted when somebody who says they know all about astrology publishes an article in the paper every day or every week, all down through the years, telling you what the astrological signs for your particular sign has to do with your future and giving you advice on how to behave yourself. And you don't object when the media report all kinds of wonderful things, miracles that are happening left and right. But remember what I told you about the media. They are not very responsible when it comes to this sort of thing. Now, I'll give you an example of that. I have someplace here, I have my hotel key. No, that's not the hotel key, that's the transit key. There we are. Now, this is a magnetic hotel key. You're all familiar with this. Now we're very familiar with it. But many years ago, I was invited to attend a magic convention. We do hold conventions, believe it or not. A magic convention in Mexico City. So I went down to Mexico City and registered at the hotel, and they gave me one of these magnetic keys. This is brand new. It had very seldom been heard of, and very few of the hotels were using it. So I was very thrilled to be in a modern hotel that would use a key like this. Very nice, and I went down to the lobby, and the media all came crowding around me and said, oh, Mr. Randi, we want to interview you. So I had a little bit of a trick. Me, a magician? Yes, I had a very good trick. And I played it on them. I said, ladies and gentlemen, why don't you come up to my room? Yes, I have coffee up there. Oh, very good. So we all went to the elevator, went upstairs, got out of the elevator, and I went and I looked around for my key, and I said, oh, I've forgotten my key. Now, they all reached for their pens right away, making notes saying, magician can't get into his own room. So I'm sure that's what they were writing down. And I said, but wait a minute. And I took out a deck of cards from my pocket, and I looked through the deck of cards, and I came out with the 3 of diamonds, put the other cards away, put the 3 of diamonds into the lock, and click, it opened up, and I walked in. And the media were all astonished and said, will that work with any playing card? And I said, no, only a red 3. And they wrote it down, and they published it in the papers that very same night. And the fellow at the cigar counter at the main floor of the hotel told me the next day, he said, I haven't got one deck of cards left. All kinds of kids were coming in here and buying decks of cards. And I'm sure they were looking for the 3 of diamonds and trying it in the doors, and it wasn't working. Oh, what a pity. But the media is so naive, and there's a reason for it, ladies and gentlemen. The media are largely educated in the humanities, not in science. So you can't really blame them. But there are some things, like using a playing card to open a magnetic lock, that they should be smart enough to know won't work. But that's an example of how naive these people are. Other examples. Oh, I will demonstrate this for you. As a matter of fact, I can do that because I have, where is my, well, oh, here it is. I have a wallet embedded in my chest right here. These glasses are no use whatsoever. And I'm going to do a little test here for you. This is a little device that's known as the counterfeit dual test detector. It has in it, look at this, a little ultraviolet light that you can use to look at your bills. You see your bills to make sure they're not counterfeit, of course. Well, it will tell you something about the bills. There are secret markings on the bills, but the better part is the other end of it here. I'm going to do a demonstration for you. In my wallet, where did I put the wallet? There it is. I'm sure I have a bill here. Ah, here we are. This is, oh, a $20 bill. Well, it's not a $100 bill, but, you know, this is a cheap lecture. So I'm going to step down into the audience for a moment here. I'm going to ask, I don't want to choose a skeptic, you see, and these people look like skeptics, so I choose someone who's relatively innocent. You look innocent, young lady. But you take this pen from me, take the top off it. That's it. And there's a little tiny business on there, take that off as well. Now, would you make a mark on the clear part of the bill for me, please? Just any kind of a mark. Now, what color does that look?
Orange brown.
Sort of, yes.
Yeah.
All right, let me put the cat, or put the other, I'll let you put it all together for me. All right.
Okay.
Now, we got an orange-brown mark on here, an amber-colored mark. Yes, an amber-colored mark on a $20 bill, and it says right on the pen that if it's an amber-colored mark, that means the bill is genuine. If it turns black, however, may I have the pen back, please? Would you mind to bring it to me here? Thank you. Don't trust that man with your purse. I know him. Thank you very much. Now, the interesting bit about this is that this is not a genuine bill, though it says it is. You see, it has an advertisement printed on the back, and it's made out of newsprint. It's not made of real money at all. Oh, now I think the Secret Service will probably be after me for this, but I must demonstrate for you that on a regular piece of paper, and I can get the top off here, I have a regular piece of paper right here. Look at this, whoops. Now that is black. It starts out as amber and then it turns to black. The reason this pen is supposed to work, astonishingly enough, is it has tincture of iodine in it. It's very good if you cut yourself shaving, you see. It's very good for that purpose, but for no other purpose. It detects starch, because as you remember from your chemistry classes, iodine, tincture of iodine mixed with starch will turn black. Dark blue and then black. So that is detecting starch, because the patent papers on this pen sitting right here, which costs, I think it's now $11.40 or something for one of these pens, but it will test hundreds of bills. Not that that will tell you anything, but it will test hundreds of bills. The interesting thing about that is that this pen detects starch and nothing else, because they say that the counterfeiters use cheap paper to print their bills. Why would you use cheap paper? You're going to change a piece of paper that big into a $100 bill? That's a big markup from the original cost, don't you think? I think you could afford to get better paper, you see, because bills are printed, regular bills are printed on acid-free paper and paper that is free of starch. So it will show up amber on a real bill, and if it was a counterfeit bill made with cheap paper, it would show up black. But what you just saw was used on newsprint, very common newsprint, which doesn't have starch in it. And therefore, it doesn't show any black mark. It just shows an amber mark. This is a total fake, but it's being sold all over the United States of America. Every stationery store that you can walk into in the USA has a big display card right there. Detect counterfeit money, along with the little ultraviolet lamp too. That can't hurt. It's astonishing. It is astonishing that people will continue to buy this sort of thing, and the interesting thing is, of course, that people continue to sell it and that the law doesn't come anywhere near it. But that is how absolutely saturated society is with this whole idea of pseudoscience. They don't understand science and they simply can't use it. Now, scientists are no less vulnerable. There are scientists out there who should know what they're doing, but apparently don't know what they're doing. Now, I have someplace here a Matchbox. What did I put the Matchbox? Oh, yeah. Yes, thank you. All right. This is a little box of matches. It has an interesting story, I think, that goes along with it. It's very simple. I got a call one day at my office, and my assistant, the man who preceded Brandon as my assistant, answered the phone along with me. I said, listen in, listen in. And it was a fellow from Lawrence Livermore Laboratories in California. Now, this is a very, very prestigious laboratory. If you walk into that laboratory and throw an apple in any direction, you'll hit a PhD. They're all over. It's absolutely packed with PhDs in physics, usually. And this gentleman said, my name is Dr. So-and-so. I won't mention his name, so I wouldn't embarrass him. And he said, we have proof for the $1 million, Mr. Randi. I was terrified, of course, because this is a PhD talk. And he said, yes, we have proof of it because we have a fellow here, and he gave me his name. He said, he's from Israel. It was not Uri Geller, no. He was somebody I'd never heard of. And I said, oh, and what does he do? And he said, well, he is able to take a simple matchbox and place it on the back of his hand, and it will stand up on the back of his hand. That's wonderful. Now, I looked at my assistant, who was very familiar with magic, and I just indicated the magic books that I have on my counter and my shelf in the office, and he nodded at me, and he went and took out a book by Martin Gardner, who just died 2 weeks ago, unfortunately. Martin Gardner, a great mathematician and scientist, and a wonderful journalist, very, very close friend of mine, who had written this book called Impromptu Magic. And my assistant at the time, Andrew, looked through the book, and he indicated he'd found the page, and he went out to the other telephone where the Xerox machine, the copy machine, he had to make a copy of it first, and then the fax machine was sitting there. And he knew what to do. He could read my mind, you see. Yeah, sure. I said to the fellow at Lawrence Livermore Labs, I said, how did you select the matchbox? And he said, oh, we did it scientifically. He was a PhD after all. He wouldn't do it any old way. They went to the local grocery store and they bought a package of 24 of these. Big cellophane package like that. And they chose it at random without looking. Sure. They took out a box of 24 of them, took them back to the laboratory and mixed them all up. And then they chose one at random and they put the rest of them aside. And then they took out one of the matches and they tested it. And it worked. Wonderful. Okay, and so they marked the box indelibly so that it would be a certain sample. They would have their specimen there. And they had examined, as I said, the matches themselves. And so they took it and they gave it, and Ronnie Marcus was this fellow's name. They gave it to Mr. Marcus. And I said, well, what did he do with it? And they said, oh, very simple thing. He just simply laid it down on the back of his hand. And watch what happened. The matchbox stood up on the back of his head. And it stayed stayed there, and then when he told it to go back down again, it went back down. Astonishing. Years of practice in self-denial. And I have no idea how it was done, you see, because I have another one here, looks exactly the same. I said to him, would you go to your fax machine, please? And he said, oh yes, the fax machine is running. And he got a sheet of paper, and it said at the top, the title of the book, Martin Gardner's Impromptu Magic, is The Standing Matchbox Trick. And he read this to me on the phone. He said, oh, all right. He said, get a matchbox into the thing. There was a long silence. I said, are you still there? He said, oh yes, I'm reading. He hung up the phone, and that was it. Never heard from him again. Because what Mr. Gardner described was you simply open up the box a little bit like this, and as you lay it down on the back of your hand, you squeeze the loose skin on the back of your hand in the box like that, and then you just tighten up the skin of the back of your hand, and it stands up, and then it goes back down again. You see, I have no idea how it works, as I say. But that's a simple, simple little kid's trick that had fooled a multiple PhD in physics from Lawrence Livermore Laboratories. Now, I'm not putting down Lawrence Livermore Laboratories or PhDs or physicists, of course. I'm just showing that these people often think that they know something with such security that nothing can shake their belief and that they can't be fooled. Yes, they can be deceived. And my theory about PhDs is something that if there are PhDs in the audience, and I'm sure there are someplace, don't take this seriously. It's only my little joke. But I have an idea that when they make a person into a PhD, and they do, you know, it's actually a ceremony, and a PhD is created. You see, it's a big auditorium about like this. On one side are all the candidates in the funny robes, you know, with the square hats and everything. They look rather silly, but they have to do it for one day. And all the parents are on the other side, the family, and they're all waiting for their kid to get up there, you see. And it's rather interesting. I've watched this very carefully and studied it, so this is why I've come to this conclusion about PhDs, which I'll have announced to you. I notice that there's another fellow standing at a desk about like this, and he has all these rolled up pieces of paper with little ribbons around them with names on them. And he picks one up and he calls out a name, and one of the PhD's candidates gets up and marches up on the stage, and everybody applauds, especially his family. And he comes over, and this is what the gentleman does. He takes the roll in this hand, he shakes hands with the other one like this, and he hands it to him in his other hand. And the PhD candidate picks it up. Now, if you watch very carefully, and I'm very, very careful in this, I'm a very good observer, you see. I have gotten down level with the stage. And he walks across the stage like an ordinary person. But the minute that piece of paper hits his hand, if you look carefully, you'll see a small space between the floor and the PhD, because he moves around rather strangely. He's skidding, you see. He has a hard time moving now, but as he leaves the stage, he's exalted. He's changed magically. He's now a PhD, and it's a holy sort of a thing, you see, sort of a religious experience. I'm lying about the being off the stage. It's not really true, but I just want to test your credulity, you see. I'm glad that you laughed at it. Thank you. The point is that they think that this has made them very special. But what is, this is the question I have, what is the reason for the man on the stage there who gives these things out for wearing gloves? Now that's very suspicious, and I got thinking about that. Why would he wear gloves? And this is my theory, take it or leave it. I think that in those rolls of paper, there is a secret chemical. A secretly highly engineered chemical which absorbed into the skin, goes directly into the blood and to the brain, and paralyzes a part of the brain in the speech center. That small part of the brain which could normally say, I don't know, and I was wrong. Now that's my PhD theory, and again, it's only a joke. I ask you not to take me too seriously on that at all, but I have tested it out on PhDs. I say, are you a PhD? Oh yes, probably from Rutgers University, you know. Oh really? Say this after me. I was wrong. And he'll say, I was heard. It's not a pretty picture. It's not a good thing to see whatsoever. And I was wrong is even worse. I was You cannot say it. I think my theory is probably correct. I'm not sure, but I think it's correct. So again, that's my little bit of fun at PhDs. Without them, we'd be far worse off, I can assure you. But with some of them, we're not too well off. So I have another video to show you now, and I think that you'll get a bit of a kick out of this one as well. And you will now see what we call psychic surgery. This is done by the so-called surgeons in the Philippine Islands and several other places around the world as well, but particularly in the Philippine Islands. It purports to be surgery. It has nothing to do with surgery. Watch very carefully and you'll see how it's done. Now, ladies and gentlemen, remember one thing. I should be dead by now. I took this huge dose of homeopathic medicine. In fact, I'll take a few more just to make sure. I don't want to take any chances with cheating you see. Here, another 20 of them or so. Down they go. And I will drink the part of the glass of water.
Are you feeling asleep already?
Yeah. I think I'm very, very dead now. I certainly should be dead. The point is, ladies and gentlemen, to do these show business-like demonstrations for you, it's something that will stay with you. I should be dead by now if it's possible for me to get an overdose of homeopathy. It's obviously not possible. I can't prove that something doesn't exist. Now, I could perform an experiment, I could design an experiment, and I will right now here in front of you. Let's, it's very difficult to prove that someone doesn't exist, but let's examine one of the phenomena that is claimed. Flying reindeer. Reindeer flying? I don't think so, unless you have a very big catapult. I'm not sure how reindeer would fly. But let's test the theory. Let us go up on top of the Eiffel Tower with 20 reindeer, okay? I think you see what's going to happen. It's a brutal experiment, but it's in the name of science, so there. And we number them, 1, 2, all the way up to 20. And then we have a gentleman standing over here who's making the notes, and he says the temperature is so-and-so, and the time is such and such, okay. And number 1, and he finds number 1. Take number 1 over to the edge of the Eiffel Tower, and I do the experiment, of course, and I push and I say, fly! Right down opposite number 1. No. Number 2. Oh, come on, number 2. You're in there someplace. And we drag number 2 out. The same thing. Push. Oh my goodness. What am I going to get? I don't know because I haven't done the experiment. But I presume that I am going to get 20 very dead and broken reindeer at the foot of the Eiffel Tower, and probably a couple of gendarmes down there saying, I don't know, Pierre, here comes another one. I presume that because I know I have experience of the world, you see. But at the end of that experiment, this is my important question now, have I proven that Santa Claus doesn't exist, or even that reindeer cannot fly? No, not until I perform the experiment with every reindeer, and I've got to look at the motivation of the reindeer too. Perhaps they just weren't interested in flying. Very difficult experiment to do, very difficult thing to prove a negative, and I cannot prove a negative. Now, we look upon ourselves as educated and modern folks. All of us do. Yet we still believe in angels, gods, demons, devils, heaven and hell, and eternal life. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to grow up, and we should do it now rather than later. I'm going to ask for questions and answers, but before that, I will give you an ample opportunity to forgive me for the trick that failed and applaud me for the rest of it that worked.